Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. British authorities are continuing to investigate the suicide bombing in Manchester on Monday, the one that killed almost 24 people. And nothing they have found so far will surprise you. 7 people have been arrested for possible involvement in that plot. Police are warning that bomber Salman Abedeh may simply have been the mule for a bomb built by someone else, and that person remains at large and could strike again. So that is one concern. But there are other facts in the case that ought to get policymakers thinking deeply about how and why this happened. And again, this will all seem familiar to you if you've watched any of these before. The bomber was born in Britain, not some far-off land, but he still grew up to embrace Islamic radicalism and declare war on the country that raised him and kill his neighbors, in effect. There are many more like him. A new report released by the British government concludes there are about 3,500 people being watched as potential terrorists. Not a big country. At least 400 people who have returned to Britain after leaving to fight for ISIS, the very group that took responsibility for the Manchester bombing. So maybe there's lessons here, patterns that lawmakers need to consider as they respond, or we could go with the traditional choice, the one favored by our leaders, which is to add British flags to our Facebook profiles, pretend that terrorism somehow brings us together rather than drives us apart, and dismisses anyone who asks real questions as a bigot and a nativist, so we can maintain the illusion that terror bombings are just an unavoidable fact of life in the big city. Which is the better option? Joining us now to help decide, Nigel Farage, he's the former leader of the UK Independence Party, UKIP, and Mark Steyn, the famous author, columnist, and sometimes guest host for Rush Limbaugh. It's great to see you both. So, Nigel, just a factual question first. There are Brits who the authorities know have gone to fight for ISIS, and they are walking free on your island. How can that be?
I simply can't believe it, Tucker. I mean, for the last few years I've said that either we take away the passports of people we suspect of being linked to ISIS and stop them going, or perhaps better still, when they've been to Syria, on their attempt to return, we take their passports away and stop them coming back in. And the remarkable thing is that we know of 400 that have been to fight in Syria that have returned, though we suspect the number may be 1,000 or more, and yet we've only taken action against 40. It is, you know, and I'm frankly sick to death of seeing prime ministers and leaders standing up after attacks saying how awfully sorry we are for everything when nothing is being done to counter the bad guys.
So, Mark Steyn, if you're running a country and you know that people in your country have gone to fight with the most grotesque terror group ever created and you do nothing about it, you're really not trying to protect your population, are you?
No, I'm old-fashioned enough to believe in treason. You described this killer as British. These 850 people, I think, who are known to have gone off to fight in Syria and Iraq, Nigel will know this better than I do, but for purposes of comparison, at the height of the IRA's campaign, MI5 estimated that there were no more than 100 active operatives, and that involved just basically going 20 miles down the road. These guys traveled halfway round the planet to fight for the Queen's enemies. That's the definition of treason. I don't know why they're walking around on the street. We're told that it would be very expensive to throw 850 people into prison. Germany estimates that for every one of these suspects they're tracking, they need 60 people tracking that guy. So it's a lot cheaper to toss them into prison for going off and fighting for your enemies abroad than it is to have 60 people monitoring them and then doing nothing until 48 hours after they've blown up a bunch of people.
But you got to wonder, Nigel, if the government can't even punish people who are at war with it and with its population, then what is the point of having a government? Isn't that the most basic responsibility of a government?
Well, the primary aim of any government should be to protect its citizens and the integrity of the nation. I'm afraid this country is so hidebound by political correctness that we have allowed the mass sexual rape and abuse of thousands of underage girls in northern cities, and we've done nothing about it. We've allowed people to go and be deeply radicalised, even brutalised in Syria, and done nothing about it, all because we're scared of being thought, perhaps, if we target one particular community, those of Islamic faith, we might be thought to be racist. And what is interesting is that our Prime Minister, Theresa May, was, of course, for 6 years the Home Secretary. She was the person in charge of all of this. And frankly, all I can say is she failed dismally in any attempts to stop radicalization from within or to stop bad people from outside coming into our country. And, you know, Manchester was a shock. It was a new low. I mean, attacking young girls at a concert, and people are upset, people are angry, but I think we now, even us, the slow-to-anger Brits, now need some action from our government.
So, Mark, do you agree with that? Do you think it's a matter of leaders who would literally rather see children die than be called bigoted?
Yes, I think so. I was listening to the Deputy Mayor of Manchester today. I think it's Baroness Hughes. Nigel will correct me if I'm wrong. But she was saying we have to have the courage to call this what it is. And then she said it's extremism. Well, extremism is a weaselly and evasive term. And then she said we have to accept that Muslim people are no more likely to commit these acts than white people are. And that, in fact, is not the case. Not after Brussels, not after Nice, not after the Berlin Christmas market, not after the murder of the French priest, Père Hamel, last year. There is a particular problem. And as disgusting as what happened on Monday night was, equally concerning is the reaction of people like the Deputy Mayor and the Prime Minister and the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, who are basically asking the citizens of the United Kingdom to live with the official lie, where nothing can be said that is actually approximates to the reality of the situation here. That's Soviet and totalitarian. They basically said this is an official lie, you know it's absurd, you know it doesn't match what you see, but this is it and you have to accept it. It's wicked to do that.
You're required to believe it. They want to control your mind, not just your behavior. Nigel, when you watch the American response, even the cultural response to an event like what happened in your country on Monday, are you surprised by how few of the lessons Americans are learning from this?
Well, I'm not sure, actually. I think there is a sort of real optimism here. I spoke to Seb Gorka yesterday, who, of course, is dealing with counterterrorism with President Trump in the White House, and I think there is a new mood in the American government, a desire to cast aside political correctness, a genuine desire to stop radicalization from happening. I mean, had Hillary won, I mean, look, she couldn't even bring herself to use the phrase Islamic terrorism. I think with Trump, you have got somebody who has the moral courage to deal with this. And Tucker, can I say, I thought his speech in Riyadh to 50 of the world's biggest Muslim leaders, when he said to them, drive out from your own places of worship those that spread extremism. So I think America is in a much better place than we are here. Though I have to say, you mentioned already, there are 3,500 terrorist suspects living in the United Kingdom. Do you know, in Belgium, with a population of 12 million, there are 18,000 suspected terrorists. So, you know, there are some countries even worse than us.
I'm feeling better about America already. Nigel and Mark, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, another small story out of the UK this morning, not terror-related, but one that says a lot. A new survey found that British university students were so overwhelmed by student loan debt that a third of them would consider prostitution in order to pay off their loans. And before you judge that, consider that the situation here in the U.S. may be no better. The student loan debt is higher here. More than 1 million college kids have enrolled in one prostitution website, just one. There may be others hoping to sell themselves for cash. These are normal kids working to get an education. People you might know might live on your street, willing to become hookers to pay the bills. Is that the America you remember? Isn't this a rich country? Well, for some, it's richer than ever, but for the middle class, signs of poverty are everywhere. Take a trip outside the city sometime. It's like the recovery never happened because in a lot of places, it didn't happen. Almost half the people who live here in the U.S. cannot come up with $400 on a day's notice. That's the pair of tires for your truck, not even all four. And yet it's still too expensive, perhaps, maybe even likely, for your neighbors. Since 1990, the percentage of working-age Americans classified as, quote, disabled has doubled. For a lot of them, the main disability they face is a total lack of jobs anywhere near where they live. None of these people shows up in the fake unemployment numbers Washington shamelessly peddles to the rest of us. Is it really surprising then that heroin use has exploded in rural America? Drug ODs kill 50,000 people a year in this country. Now, in a lot of ways, things are bad in parts of America, and that's exactly why so many voters rolled the dice on Donald Trump in the last election. It's also why it is vital that the people in charge address the underlying problems that put him there in the first place. But they're not addressing those problems, in case you haven't noticed. The latest evidence comes from a new poll released by Politico. As of this morning, 68% of Democrats say that President Trump should be impeached and removed from office. Nearly half of Democrats, this is amazing, believe that Congress's top priority ought to be investigating the administration's ties to Russia, not fixing health care, unemployment, the opioid crisis, or even figuring out why college kids are selling their bodies to pay their student loans. But the Russia conspiracy, that's the most important thing to half of all Democrats. As we've noted before many times, this is crazy. Worse than that, it's negligent. The real story is not Donald Trump, whatever you think of him. It's the people who voted for them. They voted for him for a reason, in some cases, even though they didn't really care to vote for him. A lot of them were actually Democrats abandoned by their party. Democrats could probably win a lot of these people back if only they cared about their lives. But instead, the party has retreated further into the cul-de-sac of identity politics. Open borders, transgender bathrooms, any number of esoteric and poorly thought-out ideas pushed by its component interest groups. And now, Russia. The grandest conspiracy of all, the one that explains everything in the universe, very much including the failures of the Democratic Party. Trump didn't win, Putin installed him. It's a lie, but it feels good. What a relief from self-reflection that is. So Democrats take hit after hit until one day they're hopelessly addicted to this lie. They're Putin heads looking for another fix on CNN. It's amusing and it's poignant, it's sad, but meanwhile the middle class is still dying. Zach Pekansis is a former senior advisor to the DNC. He ran the party's Trump War Room, and he joins us tonight. Half of all Democrats believe investigating the ties between Trump and Russia is the single most important agenda item for the Congress to pursue in the face of everything that's happening in this country. That tells you everything.
I think what it tells you is that this is a very serious issue that Congress needs to take serious, and the White House needs to start taking it seriously, which is something that we haven't been seeing from them. In fact, what we've seen is that they have spent their capital trying to undermine this special counsel, throwing out, these arcane rules from the Department of Justice to try to limit the scope of what the special counsel can start investigate, so that he can't investigate Jared Kushner, so that he can't investigate Paul.
I'm sure that's right. I mean, they're worried about the special counsel.
That this is a reaction to the fact that people in Washington don't seem to be taking this seriously. Certainly not from this White House, and certainly from the Republicans.
I don't know
which
Washington you're living in. Maybe different from the one I occupy.
How about the Washington where Paul Ryan, when Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the party, joked about the fact that he believed that Donald Trump and another member of Congress were being paid by the Russians.
He may be part of the conspiracy too, but you're kind of missing the point I'm making, and so is your party, which is we just had a political revolution in November, something none of us expected, least of all the Democrats, and it happened for a reason that parties exist to pay attention to. They exist to respond to the anxieties and the hopes and the needs of their constituents. And the Democrats, rather than doing that and thinking through, like, how the hell did this happen? What did we do wrong? Went right to Russia. Meanwhile, the middle class is still dying.
First off, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Yes.
Really? Where's the evidence?
Well, I think the evidence is what we're seeing today. There is a vigorous opposition to this Republican health care bill, which is, as the Congressional Budget Office said today, is going to mean that 23 million fewer people are going to have health care by 2026.
Look,
I mean, these are pocketbook issues. If you don't think that matters for people,
I think it does matter.
A senior that is making $26,000 a year will see an 850% increase in their
But Zach, you're kind of missing the point, which is Democrats.
This is the point.
No, Democrats just lost the last election on Obamacare. Obamacare was in place. The same program all of us live under right now was in place on Election Day, and it failed the middle class. That's why Michigan and a bunch of other unexpected states went for Trump rather than Hillary. And my only point is, where is the reflection here? Where's the concern about actual issues, the unemployment numbers?
Sure.
Will focusing on Carter Page's Russia ties bring a single job to a single American? I mean, really?
First off, Rob Quist in Montana, what is he campaigning on right now? Is he campaigning on Russia? Is he talking about the special counselor? No. You know what he's talking about? He's talking about health care. He's talking about fixing Obamacare.
Exactly.
And he's talking about campaignning
against. And he's doing pretty well. You're making my point for me. And he's doing pretty well.
Look, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can absolutely walk and chew gum at the same time. We are focusing to make sure that our republic is secure, because because of the extraordinary intervention by a hostile foreign power.
You're selling crap to your voters, and you know that. You're telling them that all their problems can be explained by Vladimir Putin's intervention into American politics. And it's insane, and it's sad, and they believe you because they trust you, but you're lying to them.
We are literally going out there and campaigning every day on health care. That's what our candidates are going out there and talking to people about. That's what members of Congress are spending their time focusing on. I mean, if you turn on the TV
Really, because I live here, and I host a cable show in this city, and I can promise you that every person I talk to on the left is totally absorbed in the Russia story, and this poll, on which this whole segment is predicated, proves that it's true.
Look, Russia is an extraordinarily important issue because there is a potential active obstruction of justice piece that's going on right now, and it's very, very important. However, we are talking in a very focused way on health care, which is all the evidence you need is if you go into Montana, if you go into Georgia, and the Georgia
Well, actually, I'm agreeing with you that when Democrats address middle-class economics, they have a shot. And by the way, the country deserves someone to focus on that.
Sure.
Bernie Sanders almost got your nomination, and he did it not by talking about Russia or these weird social issues that really serve nobody except your stupid little interest groups. He talked about bread and butter things like student loans, which are a real thing. And you guys have abandoned that completely.
I mean, if you go onto the floor of the House of Representatives, what are they talking about? They're talking about health care. They're talking about jobs. The first thing that the Senate Democrats did, what do? They sent an infrastructure jobs bill to the White House. Where has that been? That has been sitting there languishing.
So really, they're going to impeach Trump because he's not responding to the opioid crisis or unemployment or the rise in health care costs? No, they're trying to impeach him because they think that he's Vladimir Putin's marionette, and it's insane.
The Democratic leadership is not talking about impeachment. What they are talking about is this awful health care bill that is going to mean that 23 million people have fewer people have health care. Can I suggest one thing?
Maybe it would be good for the Democratic Party to lead, rather than letting its interest groups set the agenda and its spun-up net roots who watch the cable shows demand action on this or that, but to articulate what the message is. The middle class needs representation, and they're ignoring it.
Again, if you want to know what we are talking about on a day-to-day basis, go see our candidates who are talking about health care, who are talking about job creation.
So you got one guy in Montana, but
and Georgia and other candidates that are going around.
Zach, it's great to see you.
You too.
Thanks. President Trump is trying to cope with a special prosecutor and a White House staff that has sprung 1 million leaks. Maybe that's too small a number. More than 1 million. Is it time to bring back one of his political allies from the campaign? Corey Lewandowski joins us in a minute. He's former Trump campaign manager. Is he going back to the White House? Published reports say yes. We'll ask. Plus, New York is heaping honors on a terrorist whose terror group murdered 5 New Yorkers. This is actually happening right now. We'll ask a city council member why he's supporting this guy and why New York is suddenly in favor of terror. An amazing story. Stay tuned. President Trump may be going back to his political roots in January 2015 when his campaign was still such a joke to pretty much everybody. Corey Lewandowski agreed to be his campaign manager. He didn't get Trump to the finish line. He got him to the nomination, though. Now rumors are swirling that Trump wants to bring Lewandowski back to the White House as part of a special crisis management team. Are the rumors true? Corey Lewandowski joins us tonight to confirm or deny. Corey, you going back to the White House?
Tucker, the only time I go to the White House is as a guest. You know that, just as a visitor. I like to bring my family sometimes. That's about it.
So you wouldn't consider going back to work as a crisis manager as this investigation proceeds?
Well, let me be very clear, and I think everyone knows this. My loyalty is to the president and to make sure that his agenda, which he ran on, which is jobs, homeland security, building a wall, making sure people are back to work, cutting taxes for the American working class is moving forward. And if that means I can help the president by doing that, of course, it would be a privilege. But let me be clear. I've got a great life. I love doing what I'm doing. If I can help the president from the outside, I can be very, very helpful from the outside, maybe much more so than even on the inside.
If you went inside, what would you do? What does crisis management mean in an investigation like this?
You know, honestly, I don't know. And to be clear, you know, I haven't had any conversations about this. So what's amazing is, you know, there's one media outlet which we like to qualify as fake news. It's called Politico. They write a story, and all of a sudden everybody picks up on it and says, wow, it's factual. And what's amazing to me was I was on an airplane coming back from Miami on Monday. The plane lands, the story breaks, and all of a sudden I get a bunch of phone calls that says, hey, heard you have a job at the White House, which nobody told me or anybody else I had been associated with. So, you know, don't believe everything you read in the fake news.
Oh, I would never defend Politico. It's a ridiculous little website. But a lot of people in the White House talk to Politico, I've noticed. That is real. They're getting a lot of calls from staff, both career people and appointees, from within the building. And so that's kind of the larger question. Why all these leaks? I've never seen this many leaks in any administration since I've been here.
Well, Tucker, it's very clear to me, and what we've seen is we saw a report, and I don't know if it's actually accurate or not, but we saw that there are 3 staffers who've been identified by a news outlet that have leaked classified information. If that happened, those people should be held to the highest standards of the law accountable, which is a felony. If there are additional leaks that are taking place, I would recommend that the staff of the White House dig in as hard as they can to find out who those leaks are and immediately and permanently remove those people, not just from the White House, but from any government agency that they are working for, and move them out as quickly as possible. There is a deep state that wants to see the president not accomplish his agenda. They did not support him when he ran. They do not support him as the president, and they should not be working in this administration.
And they're working day and night to undermine the president. So 2.5 hours ago, the New York Times put a story on its website saying that intelligence services picked up conversations between Russian intelligence officials talking about how to suborn, how to influence the Trump campaign. Now, there's no suggestion in the piece that the Trump campaign cooperated with this or became agents of Russia, but this is clearly an attempt by career intel officers to hurt the White House. That's a big deal. That doesn't happen a lot in normal administration. So what is being done to stop this? This will paralyze the administration if it goes on.
Well, that's right. And look, I don't think, the intelligence community, they have traditionally been nonpartisan. But let me be clear. We see time and time and time again now that the president is having private conversations that very few people have access to, that in many cases are classified. The Drudge Report had a story today that classified information was leaked again by a president's conversation with another world leader. That is being done from the intelligence community solely to discredit this president. They don't want to see him be successful. They are doing so not just at the detriment of the president, but at the detriment of the entire country. These people need to be held accountable. They need to be found out who they are. They need to be removed immediately. And if they have committed a crime, they need to be prosecuted for that crime.
So there's going to be, or there already is, in fact, a criminal investigation underway, and we're not exactly sure who the targets are, but presumably everyone who works over there and anyone in the orbit. What's going to happen if the people conducting that investigation start leaking what they find during the course of it?
Well, again, you completely erode the public trust. And, no matter what takes place, there are things that should be brought out to the public in the interest of full disclosure, and there are things that should be done behind the scenes to make sure that they aren't leaked. And what we've seen in this administration, unlike in the Obama administration, the Bush administration before him, is the leaks from within the organization. I think what has to be done is the president has about 4,000 presidential appointments. I think the staff needs to work as due diligence as quickly as possible to make sure his appointees are being put in place. We have seen time and time again the holdovers. We saw at the Department of Education just yesterday a holdover quit as opposed to testifying before the committee. We saw that Sally Yates refused to implement a direct order of the president and was removed from her job. These people who served under the Obama administration will do anything they can to destroy this president. They need to be removed, and they need to be brought in. New people need to be brought in who are loyal to the president and, moreover, loyal to the country.
Yeah, I mean, like yesterday, and we don't have time to ask why that hasn't been done, but it is the question that hangs in the air. Corey Lewandowski, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Oscar Lopez Rivera was a leader in a terror group that committed hundreds of bombings and killed 5 in New York. He went to prison for a long time now. He's out. Obama got him out. Now New York City is honoring him as a great man. Up next, we'll talk to a city councilman who compares him to Nelson Mandela. Puerto Rican Day Parade is coming up in 2 weeks, and this one will make national news. Organizers have announced they're going to honor a man called Oscar Lopez Rivera during the parade. Who's he? Well, just a terrorist, literally. Lopez Rivera was a leader with the FALN, a Puerto Rican paramilitary group that was committing all kinds of attacks throughout the United States in the 70s and 80s in an effort to make Puerto Rico communist. They murdered 5 people in New York during a series of bombings. Lopez Rivera would still be in prison for as many crimes, but President Obama commuted his sentence just before leaving office with very little fanfare since the press didn't really bother to cover it, and he went free. Jermaine Williams is on the City Council of New York City, and he signed a letter praising Lopez Rivera, declaring solidarity with him. I'm not even sure what to say about this. I mean, you represent New York City, a city you'd think would be sensitive to terror. and yet you're endorsing an admitted terrorist. There's no debate about what the guy did. He admitted it. So why would you do that?
So one, I'm going to be marching the Puerto Rican Day Parade to celebrate the heritage and the culture there. Two, Mr. Lopez has said that he hasn't committed any violent crimes and hasn't been associated with violent crimes. And lastly, a lot of these things depends on the vantage point that we're looking at. And so Nelson Mandela was a terrorist until 2008, 5 years before his death, by the United States government. And so a lot of times people are conflating and they use violence, as they say, as a separation. But what they're trying to say
I don't even know. You didn't even do your research. I mean,
Sure.
what do you mean you did admit it? He did admit it. He was convicted. He was convicted. Hold, slow down.
Sure.
I actually read contemporaneous news reports today.
Sure.
In 1981, he went on trial. He was convicted of armed robbery and bomb making and a bunch of other things. He admitted that he did it. Then
Sure.
President Clinton tried to offer him clemency if only he would renounce violence, and he wouldn't. So there's no debate that the guy
there is
committed
debate.
acts
They're
of
actually,
he admitted to armed robbery.
Because they didn't recognize the United States, they actually didn't put up a defense. And so everyone, the United States just went ahead and did their own case. But he has renounced
That's
violence.
not true. He was tried in our justice system and admitted that he committed armed robbery and made bombs.
We should get that aside. We should get to the real point. And so many people conflate saying, I don't believe in the tools of the cause when they really just don't believe in the cause to begin with. So I submit to you what strategy should be used to fight for one's freedom, justice, and equity.
Well, how about the strategy they use in Puerto Rico, which is having referenda where the Puerto Ricans get to vote on whether they want to be an independent country or a state or a territory,
Sure.
which they regularly do. They do that all the time. You obviously don't follow this in any detail. You're glomming on to the guy because he's a fashionable communist, but he's also a terrorist.
Again, Nelson Mandela was viewed as a terrorist till 2008.
But this is, are you really comparing him to Nelson Mandela?
Yeah. Martin Luther King was the most dangerous man in America by the FBI. He was shot and killed violently. What we're saying, we do this very often.
Did Martin Luther King commit armed robbery?
What we're saying
you could say that. No, what are you saying?
What I'm saying is we conflate a lot of issues. We oftentimes don't believe in the cause.
You're conflating issues. I'm not even attacking the cause.
Sure.
I'm merely saying armed robbery and making bombs are not legitimate forms of political expression,
well,
and you are saying they are.
The United States has supported people who have done violent acts in the course of getting their freedom across the world.
Okay,
what we tend to do is...
Okay, but I'm not for that. Are you for that? Are you
I'm not.
for
What I'm
violent
saying
acts?
is,
Then why are you
what I'm saying is we should be
making
consistent. And so when the St. Patrick's Day Parade celebrated the IRA by having them in their parade, the NYPD did not participate, possibly because there was a lot of Irish in the NYPD.
Okay, well, I guess I'm against that too, but like, I don't understand. What do you... I mean, look, you could say the same thing about Timothy McVeigh. He thought he was committing an act of war against the United States. How would you have felt if President Bush had commuted his sentence before his execution and he was honored in a parade?
Yeah, but so now you're comparing different things. We have a colony that has no representation and can't vote for president, can't vote in Congress, and what they're saying is they either want statehood or they want independence.
They get to vote. Now, again, I'm trying to be patient,
Sure.
but you don't know anything about this. They get to vote on whether they want... Okay, then are you aware that they get to vote, popular vote, on whether they want to be their own country? And they don't. I think they should, by the way. They don't because they get so much in aid from the United States.
No, but there are some people who actually do and have been fighting it for some time. The question is, what do we do when people are fighting for their freedom and justice? And so often we try to pretend...
So it's legitimate to commit armed
what I'm saying is I don't condone that. I support nonviolent. But what I'm saying is even when we do nonviolent resistance, whether it's sitting down for the Pledge of Allegiance, whether it's simply people saying Black Lives Matter, people get excoriated with the same language.
You are a demagogue who's endorsing violent behavior. You're an elected official who is making excuses for violent behavior, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
People oftentimes pretend they prefer one strategy over another when they just don't prefer any strategy at all.
Well, I don't prefer armed robbery. It's pretty simple. And you're in a position of responsibility.
Absolutely.
People voted for you. They look to you. They take their cues from you. And you should say unequivocally,
violent behavior. But this country
You're supporting a guy who admitted to armed robbery, and you're saying it was a revolutionary act.
People who became the Taliban. This country has supported Saddam Hussein. So we are saying one thing for a group of people
when
and
things
another
fall
for another.
apart, it's people like you who will be responsible for them. People
Actually,
who told their constituents it's okay to use violence.
Who actually try to conflate issues. But what I'm saying to you, whatever it is that is brought up when it comes to strategies for freedom and justice, the people who are privileged usually try to dictate what should be done and who people should celebrate.
All of us, of all colors and all incomes, can agree that armed robbery is not legitimate. You can't agree.
No, what I'm saying to you is, tell me one.
I'm out of time, Councilman. Whoa. Totally insane. At colleges across America, spaces are becoming safer and safer with dire consequences for anyone with a controversial idea. After the break, we'll talk to Adam Carolla, the most popular podcast host in the world, and the great Dennis Prager about their upcoming documentary on campus safe spaces. Plus, the press is obsessed with Melania and Ivanka's clothing choices. Our Top That panel will decide if that's merely silly or, in fact, the single silliest story of the day. Omnipresent safe spaces where they can live lives free of scary ideas they don't understand. Now, Adam Carolla wants to put them at risk. He's teaming up with radio host Dennis Prager to make a documentary film called No Safe Spaces. We're going to travel the country and ask college kids about the suppression of dissent on campus. Here's part of it.
The University of Tomorrow is here, a place of discovery, tolerance, and acceptance.
Our commitment to diversity means that nobody graduates until they think just the right way.
At Utopia University, there are no violent words to hurt me.
I will punch you if you're a fascist.
I'm going to be the next Che Guevara.
We speak out against privilege.
We've checked our privilege.
Welcome to Utopia U.
A wonderful place to learn that everything your parents taught you is wrong.
Adam Carolla and Dennis Prager join us now. Boy, this film is overdue. Adam, what did you learn in traveling the country?
Well, so far, we've only hit a couple of colleges, but all you have to do is watch your show, and you'll learn everything you need to know about campuses turning into a romper room.
I mean, it's so distressing. Dennis, when you talk to these kids, do they know how unfree they are?
They don't care. This is what's so disturbing. What was it, a Pew poll, I think it was? About half of the kids at college in America today believe in freedom of speech, because the others, when you ask them, and you could see this on the internet, it's amazing to watch these kids say this, oh, we believe in free speech, just not for hate speech, not understanding that nobody ever really needed to protect love speech.
Well, hate speech is not actually a legal category. Kind of hilarious that they think it is. So, Adam, when you go to these camps, you got the biggest podcast in the world, by the way. Congratulations on that. When you show up at these college campuses, or when you deal with college students, do they understand that things are very different now from the way they were when you were in college? Do they sort of know that they're in the middle of this moment, or do they think it was always this way?
I wasn't in college, but thank you. I was on a construction site picking up garbage.
That's my favorite thing about you. I forgot that.
The only hydrating I did was a gourd full of my own tears, Tucker. No, they'll remind me of that kid from the Twilight Zone who's just going to wish anyone into the cornfield who disagrees with them, and we're also scared to be wished into the cornfield by these little snot-nosed rats that we just follow suit.
You know, it's actually, we're making this movie, and it's at nosafespaces.com. We're making this movie, but the truth is it's impossible to parody what actually takes place. Harvard, and I want all your viewers to look this up, because what I'm about to say will sound like we made it up, or certainly like Adam made it up. At Harvard, they announced, I think it was last week, that no longer will there be fines on your overdue library book, which is 50 cents a day, by the way, 50 cents a day, because we understand how much pressure a Harvard student already has on him or her. You don't have to pay your overdue book fine.
Then why, I mean, the obvious question, final question to you, Adam, since you didn't go to college and you did just fine, why would you send your kids to college?
Great question.
I would like you to come and speak to my wife, Tucker, because I've been saying this for a million years. We're just sending them to be poisoned,
exactly.
Like that Nike commercial. Like they're out in the audience wearing gray jumpsuits and being indoctrinated into these horrible ideologies. To be fair, some of them should be scared when the giant Jewish guy comes and yells at them. But other than that, they have no excuses.
Right, I'm very scary. I really do. I scare them.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it's
hope
the whole
you do
thing.
scare
It's
them.
painful. Yes,
It is.
yes, you're
No
right.
Safe Spaces is the movie, and every person on the show is going to watch that. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, don't miss our entire hour of stories like this. On Monday, Memorial Day, we bring you a special edition of the show Campus Craziness. It'll be in this time slot, 8 Eastern on Monday. Grab a beer and enjoy yourself. Well, in the wake of the Manchester bombings on Monday, Katy Perry says she's got an easy solution for stopping all terrorism. She's figured it out. Is it the weirdest story of the day? Top that. The Weird Story Contest is next. Time now for Top That, kind of like the Nobel Peace Prize for strange news. President Trump has caused massive inflation in the news economy, so a single story per segment is no longer enough. We created this segment to decide the weirdest thing that has happened today in the news. Here to decide for us, Jillian Turner, former White House National Security Council employee, probably the best one, and Lisa Booth, star of the Washington Examiner, and they join us tonight on the set. Great to see you. Lisa, what do you have? Blow my mind.
Well, Tucker, there's been a lot of talk about how to stop terrorism, and I think we finally found the answer.
I think, like, the greatest thing that we can do now is just unite as people, as, like, fan bases, all of it, you know? I think that the greatest thing we can do is just unite and love on each other, and, like, no barriers, no borders. Like, we all need to just coexist.
Well, there's actually been reports that...
Who was that?
That was Katy Perry.
Katy Perry.
Oh,
my God, really?
Yeah, no idea.
Tucker.
No clue.
Oh, my God.
But there's actually been reports that al-Baghdadi and ISIS were so moved by these statements that they've decided to lay down their arms.
You know, I'm not surprised, because the coexist bumper sticker has been remarkably effective in the war against terror.
Right.
Do you know what I mean, with all the religious symbols on it? Visualize world peace and all that stuff.
Well,
I mean, it just stops them in their tracks.
And too, the irony of this is the fact that she lives in an almost $20 million gated community. She's got a security detail, so clearly she is the last person to have to worry about any sort of danger around her. So it's just ridiculous.
Now you're just trying to make Tucker jealous.
But I think Nikki Haley might have to watch her back now, because I think we might have found a new UN ambassador.
Well, the rest of us could just love on each other and think about that.
And solve all the world's problems.
Jillian, can you beat that?
I think so.
Okay.
You've known me for a while.
Yes.
It takes a lot to offend me.
Yes.
A lot at this point. You know, I've been
You're
doing
remarkably even-tempered. It's your years in the National Security Council.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Working for 2 administrations, everybody hates me. That's fine.
Yes.
But this week, I got offended. And I wanted to bring this story to you.
Okay.
As you know, the president traveled to the Middle East, and most of the news cycle has been focused on that for good reason. You know, this sends signals all around the world. Everything is up for grabs, for analysis when it comes to this trip. How long he's away for, what countries he visits, what order he visits them in, how long he stays, who he meets with, who goes with him, all fair game. But I felt like there was an inordinate amount of attention this year and, like, pithy analysis of what the First Lady and Ivanka Trump wore on their heads. Whoa. And my issue with this, the main commentary was about the fact that they wore veils in Vatican City when they visited the Pope, and they didn't wear head coverings in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Which is all that's fine. But to focus on